How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech. So after all of the info and reviews and everything about the new RTX 3080 being released, it's finally time for you to make a decision on which one you are planning to get once a stock is actually available, which is currently really low. So two of the options that you're most likely going to take a look at is either going to be the Gigabyte Gaming RTX 3080 OC or the Asus TUF RTX 3080. Now, I've already done a review on both of these cards, so if you want to check either one of those, check out the link in the video description. And you guys can see we only have the Gigabyte here. So I had already needed to send back the TUF version, so that's already gone. But we have all of the benchmarks and everything. So we're gonna compare both of the cards against each other and see how they perform not only in the benchmarks for performance, but also in cooling, and then also in the design, and finally in your overclock. Both of these are overclocked straight out of the box, but we are of course going to put some manual overclock on them as well. Now, usually when choosing between a GPU you want to get, usually price is going to be the biggest factor here. But currently it isn't for these two cards. Both of them are retailing for $750 on a new egg if there's a stock. And for you in South Africa, you can pick up the Asus TUF for 20,399 Rand, and the Gigabyte a bit more expensive at 20,769 Rand on DreamwareTech here in South Africa. So pricing is extremely close as well, which is just going to make it that much harder to choose between the card you actually want to get. But before I get into which one you should buy, or maybe both, it just feels empty here. Go check out DreamwareTech.co.za, where you can get a ton of other PC products as well. Forget about subpar customer service. DreamwareTech delivers nationwide, keeps you updated on every step of the way. And something I still very much like is that everything comes inside eco-friendly packaging. So go check out DreamwareTech.co.za, who are also key partners with Asus South Africa, here where I am. So get either your Gigabyte 3080 or Asus 3080 today. But now, if a price isn't really a factor between choosing cards, what is? Design might play a big role here. So these cards do have a new refreshed design compared to their other previous cards. And both of them are looking quite a bit different compared to each other. Both of the cards do feature a backplate, but at the end it does have a bit of an exhaust there for the air to travel through to help with cooling, which is something that we saw on the NVIDIA Founders Edition as well. The cards do have a bit more of a different styling going on, where the Gigabyte has a bit more of a sharper edge design, with the TUF having some tighter tracks going over the back of the backplate and then also around the cooler. So yeah, it's a different design going for each, and it's going to depend up to what you personally like. Now, the Gigabyte card does have this weird little gap here at the front. Now, that is for the 3090 version, where it does have the NVE link right there and also the slide connection. So they kept the same cooler design, so you do get this little cutout here at the front. I wouldn't say it's the best design that they went with, but it's definitely not a deal breaker at least. Both of the cards do also feature some RGB. You do have their logos lighting up on the side, and then also RGB strip just below that. We did find that the Gigabyte's RGB strip was a little bit jerky when in the rainbow wave effect mode. Again, not the biggest deal breaker, but maybe you'll like to just keep it on a static color instead. Now, both of these cards are quite big, with both of them having a 2.7 slot design, but the Gigabyte was around 2 centimeters longer than the TUF. So just make sure that it'll be able to fit inside your case if you do get that. Smaller systems, if both of these cards won't fit in that, so be mindful of that, of course. Now, I would also recommend that you get a GPU support bracket, as these cards are also quite heavy along with the length. So definitely just check out if you can get a support bracket. Now as for I/O, both of the cards do feature the exact same with 3 DisplayPort version 1.4As and then 2 HDMI version 2.1 ports, which can go up to 8K at 60 FPS. So that's at least nice if you do have an 8K display. Now moving on to our overclocks, again, like I mentioned before, both of these cards are overclocked straight out of the box with the ASUS models. The ASUS does have a boost clock of 1740 MHz and a base clock of 1440 MHz. Whereas the Gigabyte does have a bit higher overclock at 1800 MHz. So the Gigabyte is around 60 MHz higher than the TUF, which might theoretically give you like a frame or two extra in performance. But like I mentioned in the beginning, we did manually overclock both of these cards. I keep going this side, but to really get the true potential out of both of them. So for the Gigabyte first, we did have a bit of a harder time to get a stable overclock out of this card. In the end, we did settle on a 50 MHz to the core and 150 MHz to the memory boost. The ASUS, however, was able to get a bit higher than that at an extra 100 MHz to the core and 300 MHz to the memory. So after everything, it's pretty much neck and neck in our clock speeds wise. So we'll see how that transforms into actual performance. Then next up, power, which is going to be a factor when you are going for these cards. Both of them pretty much are neck and neck with overclock, with the Gigabyte drawing 360 watts and the Asus drawing 380 watts. So you will need quite a beefy power supply. We would recommend at least going for a 700 watt power supply. Coolmaster South Africa did send over one of their V750 gold fully modular power supplies, so that was nice of them, so we could test both of these. So big thanks to them. Then next up, let's take a look at cooling. Both of the cards do feature 3 fans, which performs pretty well, and both of them are kind of the same. So the Gigabyte was a tiny bit hotter at 68 degrees compared to the 65 degrees on the TUF, but that was also on a bit of a hotter day where we didn't have an aircon to actually cool it down or get a baseline test. So it was a tiny bit hotter, but both of the cards perform pretty much the same, even in fan speeds. The TUF ran at 2100 RPM, the Gigabyte at 2200 RPM, both at 80%, and they weren't overly loud as well. So honestly, no clear winner here. Now, I wanted to mention that all of our temperature test was done on an open air test bench, so that might be a bit lower than what you potentially might get, so just keep that in mind. Make sure that your case does have plenty of airflow. So for the long-awaited benchmarks, this is going to be the deciding factor on which one you are going to buy because they're so close. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the Asus was running on the press release drivers just before the launch date. We did saw the 1% a bit lower than what it should have been, but the Gigabyte was done on the official first day release drivers, and that fixed all of the 1%. So you might see some lower 1% on the TUF compared to the Gigabyte. Just keep that in mind again. Also, just for the people who want a side-by-side visual representation of how these cards perform against each other, definitely check out the link in the video description for our other channel. We do benchmarks where you will be able to see both of them, and also a lot of other benchmarks that are coming in the future as well. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me quiet down so you guys can see how these cards perform against each other. So overall, again, these cards are so similar. The performance was so close. Like, you can't really draw a determined winner here. Most of the other tests was just like 2 frames a difference. Honestly, not anything conclusive, so they're pretty much the same. Now again, both of these cards were manually overclocked to reach their max performance, so that's honestly what you're going to get out of these cards. They're so similar, and in the end, it's just going to depend on to the design you prefer the most. I need the card here. So that's pretty much it, and also maybe the price. Maybe you can get one of them for a bit cheaper. Probably not at the moment compared to the other. So that's pretty much it. A big thanks to Asus TUF Africa and Gigabyte for sending over both of these cards for the reviews and also for this comparison. If you guys want to get either of these cards for yourself, definitely check out the links in the video description where you can also get it on DreamwareTech if you live here in South Africa. And if you guys enjoyed this review, please like, share, subscribe, and comment like always for a lot more videos. And I will check all of you next time. Cheers, guys.